So without further ado, I know we are all very excited about today's topic and guest speaker, Barbara Karnes. As you probably already know, Barbara, who's here, is an award-winning educator and nurse, as well as the 2015 International Humanitarian Woman of the Year. Barbara wrote The Little Blue Book, Gone From My Sight, and numerous other books. She has dedicated the last 35 years of her life to education, care, and comforting of dying people and their loved ones, and is a true pioneer of hospice. So welcome, and thank you so much for joining us, Barbara.
Oh, hello there. I just realized as you were talking that you probably all saw me just fluffing my hair, making myself look better. How's that for having to be humble right off the bat? I am so glad that you're all here. For those of you that know me, you know I'm a nervous speaker, so I'm gonna probably be moving around here. So I'm gonna talk for a few minutes, and then what's really exciting for me will be all the questions so that I can just talk off the top of my head and get to what's really in your head. So for a few minutes, here we go. Why do we need to take care of ourselves? You know, we're the personality that's attracted to this line of work, to working with end of life, is a fix-it personality. You know, we look to others, we put ourselves last, and in order for us to really do the best we can, we have to look at ourselves, and that's so against who we really are. As working with end of life, we are like salmon swimming upstream. We're going against everything really that we've been taught from the medical model. The medical model fixes people. Death is the enemy. Medical model doesn't really know how to deal with people who are dying. And then we come along and that's our focus. So we're stepping outside the norm. And when anyone steps out of the norm, that adds an additional amount of pressure on that person. So we have to be aware that we're different, that, you know, think about here, you all will identify with this. Someone asks you, what do you do? And you say, well, I work for hospice, or I work with end of life. And they go, oh my, you must be really special. I don't know how you do that work. Unconsciously, that is a pressure that we're not even aware of. That puts us outside the norm. You know, that's just one more thing that we don't understand. So first we have to recognize that we're different, that we're doing this work. And then we need to think, why am I doing this? You know, if everyone else is doing A, B, and C, why am I choosing X, Y, Z? And oh gosh, in the 70s, I spent a week with Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and I was going to learn how to take care of people who were dying. And the first thing that she said was, put away your notebooks, put away your tape recorders. We're going to learn about ourselves. And what she said, and I've always held on to this, is that we're all like coffee pots. And, you know, think about a coffee pot and how you have clear water that you pour into coffee grounds, and the water goes through the grounds and it comes out colored water or coffee. Life is like that. What goes on out, what is the clear water, is what goes on around and about us. It's our culture. It's our belief systems. It's our fears, our childhood experiences. Everything that's going on is the clear water. The coffee grounds are who we are. I'm sorry, the coffee grounds are the culture, the belief system. And as that clear water goes through who we are, it comes out distorted. What we have to look at is what colored water are we bringing to the bedside? You know, what is it about us that we're bringing? What's our belief system? What are our thoughts about living and dying? Because that's going to influence what we bring to our families and to the patients. Very important for us to have a solid foundation that we stand on as we reach out into the uncharted territories that end of life, that end of life is. You can tell I'm nervous, so just bear with me here. Some of the things that I learned doing this work was that we need closure for each one of our patients. You know, I got into this work and I thought I was really kind of special and that I could work with people who were dying and that I had a belief system. My belief system said being alive is hard work, being dead is easy. I believed that when you were dead, you were in a better place. So I thought, you know, there's no grieving for me. I'm here doing this great work. And after about a year of having all of my patients die, I was a facilitator at a grief workshop. And I'm the one that fell in a little heap on the floor. And I just kept saying, there are so many ghosts. There are so many ghosts. And what I realized is that I gave a little piece of myself to each one of my patients, each one of my patients' families, and that I didn't even realize that I grieved the loss of them. And with that realization, I thought, I've got to have some kind of closure, because what happens is you have a patient die in the morning and then in the afternoon you bring on a new one, or maybe you even bring on two new ones and you just move forward, and then those die and you bring on new, and on it goes. And I realized that each family and each person should have some kind of ritual within me that closes the door on them so that I can move forward. I personally chose to go to the visitation. I encouraged families to have visitation. I didn't go to funerals. Funerals are sitting there listening, but visitations are interacting. So I would go up, and hopefully it was an open casket, and I would touch the body and I would say my goodbyes. You know, thank you for coming into my life. Thank you. You know, I wish you well on your journey. And then I would go talk to the families and tell them goodbye, thank them for coming into my life. And then I moved on. I had that closure. I'm not suggesting that you all go to visitations, but I am suggesting that each of you find a ritual for yourself. Maybe it's just going and going to the 7-Eleven and buying a rose and taking it home and putting it in a special place. Maybe it's having a journal with the patient and family's names and a little comment from your heart. But some kind of ritual that allows you unconsciously to move on. I think that's really, really important. And I'm writing a new book. And yesterday I was working on a chapter called Suicide. And I was remembering some of the really horrific situations, experiences that I had, and how did I deal with that? And that is made me really think about how did I take care of myself during those times? And that leads me to realize that we need to debrief. And we tend to not necessarily do that. We're loners in our field, in that most of us are in our cars driving from one place to another. We spend our whole day either with our patients and families or alone. And when something unsettling happens to us, most of us just, pardon the pun, bury that unsettledness. And what I did with my staff was I said, if there's something that's distressing you, if something happened with your family, when you get to the car, as soon as you've done your work and you're away, you call me and we're going to debrief. You're going to yell, scream, cry, do whatever to tell your story and to get it out. Because if you don't get it out, you're going to take it home, you're going to eat with it, you're going to sleep on it, and it's going to get inside and be an unsettled place within you, and that can be forever. So we really need to get it out. Well, now hospices are a lot bigger than when I was managing and the director of a hospice. So it isn't like you can call the director and say, I had this experience. So what I would like to see is that agencies develop a buddy system so that when you come to work for a specific agency, part of that original orientation is you're assigned a buddy. Now that buddy, you can be a nurse and your buddy can be a social worker or the chaplain, or it can be another nurse. It doesn't make any difference as long as it's part of the team that you work with. So that buddy is a person that becomes your listener, the person that you can call when you leave a home and something's been distressing and say, oh my God, you're not going to believe what just happened. And you can download, because if you don't download, if you don't get it out, it will become part of you and you won't be able to stay in this work. Someone said to me, and I don't remember who it was in all my travels, but someone said to me, Barbara, I tell my people that it's kind of like the flight attendants on the airplanes. When they talk about oxygen and a mask is going to come down, and put your mask on first, and then you can help others. And we fix-it personalities tend to put our mask on last. And then we wonder why we've been in this work for 3 years and we end up going to Macy's and start selling dresses, because we can't stay in the work if we don't put our oxygen on first. And how do we do that? Oh, so many ways. So I think it's vital, the debriefing. I think having a buddy system and someone you can talk to is really important. But it's also knowing that we do a job, but we also have a life of our own. And certainly our work teaches us how precarious life is. And so we need to find joy. We need to find peace of mind in all that we do, and fulfillment. The fulfillment part is easy. That's why we're doing this work. But we tend to overlook the peace of mind and the joy. And, you know, we're harder on those people that are closest to us than we are our patients and families and the strangers that are in our life. You know, my husband and I were driving down the road years ago, and we were having an argument, and he pulled over to the side of the road and said, "Barbara, you wouldn't talk to a stranger like that." And he was right. You know, we tend to be harshest with those that we care the most about. And part of that harshness comes because in the work we do, we're on the whole time we're at work. We are giving the most loving, compassionate, gentle care to strangers. But by the time we get home, we really just want to go to bed, maybe just want to watch a television show. And yet we have all the responsibilities of our own personal life. So I think it's vital to stay in this work is to recognize the separation between work and your private life. And that often gets blurred. So when you're not working, don't work. Live, enjoy, smile, laugh, play, do what makes you feel good, because that's what life is about. And we have to practice what we preach. Okay, how's that? I don't have any time. I don't know time-wise, but are you ready for questions? Because I'm done with my little spiel, unless you want more.
Well, we have a lot of questions.
Okay.
That people have sent in and that are still sending in. So I'll just start out with the first one. Jamie H. from Agape Hospice says, how do we deal with work-life balance and how to be productive at work while also trying to get through the grieving process ourselves?
Well, now I've kind of talked about that in that I feel strongly that we have to recognize that we grieve, that we have to put closure on the patient that died and their family so that we can move forward. And that means developing your own private ritual so that you have that closure.
Definitely. Can you talk about a patient that you just can't get over, that one that you spent months taking care of and whose death was just much more painful than you anticipated? Any advice to care professionals in the field who are really struggling with one that just really touched them?
You know, we have to recognize that there is going to come along a patient and a family that means more to us than most. You know, I got into this work and I thought, I am taking care of children of God. And that's my work. That's what I do. But I also recognize that every so often there would come along someone that was more than just a child of God to me. There would come along a person that got into Barbara's heart, who filled an empty space in my heart. And that, you know, I can name, Charles was the father that I never had. Sonia was this philosopher that was, there are those people that got into my heart and met a need and filled an empty space within me. We need to recognize that that's normal and that's going to happen. But if every single one of your patients got into your heart and filled an empty space, I would have to ask, why is your heart so empty? All right. So we need to acknowledge there are some that we will grieve more for. that will become friends. You know, I exchanged Christmas cards with Elgiva for years. And it wasn't until the Christmas card finally didn't come that I realized she had died also. You know, there are those, and that's okay, but they can't be all of our patients.
Thank you. I think that's really helpful. You know, we had quite a few people ask questions about management. What can professional managers in the field do to help support their staff? We have, let's see, Cheryl S. from Assured Hospice asks, how do you care for your clinical staffs in time of staffing challenges?
Well, staffing challenges is a big word and covers a lot of territory. But I would say accessibility is the key to being a good manager. That human quality that says, as a staff nurse, social worker, or whatever, that those that I work with trust me, that I can go and not fear that I'm showing weakness, because so often we don't share our challenges with our supervisors because we think they're going to think I'm weak, that there's something wrong with me. And of course, we all wear these social masks that say everything's wonderful. But there are times in our individual life where we will personally have situations that make working more difficult. As a manager, you want your staff to come to you and feel comfortable talking with you. When I talked about debriefing, as a supervisor, depending upon how many you're supervising, and so it becomes a time management issue. But I can't think of a better way of establishing a relationship with your staff of trust, of comfort, than saying, when you need to debrief, I'm the one. You call me 24/7 if you have to, and I'm going to listen and you're going to talk. Because it isn't that we need answers when someone's debriefing, we just need an ear. And to develop a rapport with your staff, I can't think of a better way than to be that person that you have them debrief to. Some of our agencies are just too big, and so we need the buddy system. I think as a manager, accessibility and trust are the two paramount attributes of a good manager.
Thank you. I think Morgan has some questions from people that have submitted during the time of your presentation to go over with you now.
Okay.
You answered actually part of this question in the information you just shared, but Angie wrote, you know, what are some good ways to take care of my staff? They're very involved with their patients, and I worry about their well-being. I try to touch base with them individually, but maybe a luncheon, just needing additional practical ideas. And I think you just spoke to that, but you know, any others that you would suggest to connect with staff or ideas?
Team meeting, of course, is a great opportunity to bond and connect with your staff. But I really think socialization is also good. You know, we had what we called the Bones group. We met every Friday night, those of us that could, in a little Mexican cantina and had margaritas. And the Bones group was a bunch of nurses eating and slurping. And we socialized together, and that was good for us as well as, and why was it good? It was good because it brought humanity to each one of us rather than a hierarchy. You know, we were all the same as we're drinking our margaritas and talking and downloading with each other. It was a safe environment over social activities. Now, maybe you don't want to go to your local Mexican cantina, but you can have even once a month a social get together where you become friends as well as co-workers, because our work is beyond, it involves more than just most work environments. There is a piece of humanity that goes in our work that isn't necessarily there in the checkout counter at the grocery store, the cashier versus the manager of that store. So we have to look beyond the norm and build our relationships from a more intimate level. For your chaplains, you want them to have an open door policy. You want any person who works for an agency to have the comfort of picking up the phone and saying, I need to talk. Will you meet me here? Can we talk on the phone? Chaplains are really, really good at listening. Social workers, great at listening. But so are the nurses. That's part of what we're trained to do. But we tend to be thinking more about how we take care of our patients and our families than we are in taking care of each other. Think of your agency as a family. Now, and I know that there are agencies that have hundreds and hundreds of employees, so then you're going to have to narrow it down to think of your team as your family and look out for each other. We have a tendency, those particularly of us that are doing home care, to be the lone wolf. You know, we leave in the morning, we go, we see our patients, and then we come home. Sometimes we never even get to the office. We're lone wolves. And we need to think more in line with being a pack, with being a family that we take care of, as well as our own family and our patient's family.
Janet M. from OSF Hospice Home Care asked, how do you trickle up the goodwill and ideas of self-care to management? So a little bit of the flip side, but from a case manager perspective, how do you influence those ideas?
So much of what I've talked about needs to start at management level. And management needs to recognize that if they don't take care of their staff, they're going to lose them. The burnout rate for end-of-life caregivers, professional caregivers, is huge. The burnout rate is huge. And I'm sorry, folks, but I think part of that is because we in management are not taking care of our people. You know, we've got admission quotas, we've got certainly all of the Medicare protocols and micromanagement that will affect burnout, because most of us caregivers who are frontline, we're there because we're people, and we can get burned out very quickly dealing with all the micromanagement that Medicare is putting on us. When our protocols and paperwork take more time than our patient and family interactions, you're going to have burnout from your frontline people. So we need to look at how we can give our frontline people the time to do their patient-family interaction without the pressure of, I've also got this huge block of time that I have to put aside to just meet all the requirements that Medicare wants from us. And then I have to go home and deal with my family. And what happens is the family's the last one on the list that gets dealt with. Or we, the caregiver, are the last one that gets dealt with on the list. And we won't stay in this work.
That goes very well with the next question. And that's, what advice would you give professional caregivers whose agencies don't focus on the care for the caregivers? And to your point, these agencies where you have a big burnout rate or a high burnout rate, where good, really seasoned nurses are leaving at an alarming rate. How do you take care of each other when you're working and that is your environment?
Well, first, this brings to mind a story, and I hope I'm not offending anyone. I was listening to Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She was speaking at NHPCO to about 1,500 people, and she's talking about burnout. And she says, how many people here are dissatisfied with their work environment? And lots of these 1,500 people raised their hand in the air. And she stood there, and of course she can be very caustic. She said, well, then get another job. I think we need to try to address our work environment issues. But if we try to address them and there aren't changes, if there isn't a receptive ear on the other end of what we're trying to do, then we need to get another job, because life is too precious for us to be constantly unhappy in the area every day. Life is too precious. Try to make change, but there are so many hospices out there. If there's a hospice that you're not happy with, find another one. How's that for being cryptic?
The next series of questions, we actually got a handful about chaplain support, so might transition a little bit there. Virginia B. from JHC Hospice asked, how can a chaplain help the team?
Oh, chaplains, as I mentioned earlier, can be a key support for the team. Have an open door policy as a chaplain. Develop every team meeting, go around, talk to people. How you doing? What's happening? Develop those personal relationships with members of your team. You are a port in the storm, but it isn't enough to just say, I'm here if anyone wants to talk to me. You have to develop the relationship with each one of those team members as a friend, so that when they have something that they need support in, they will come to you. Just saying it doesn't do it. You've got to build a relationship. And we can all do that no matter what our role, what our job is, as far as reaching out to everyone. But chaplains, I think, have that special opportunity to look at their staff and the team that they work with as part of those that they care for. And so often we come into team meeting and we've got our paperwork and we say hello and we sit down and then we have team meeting. But how about using that as an opportunity to literally touch base with everyone there as a friend with a smile, so that when they do need you, there's comfort there and they'll call.
Great. And Judy Johnson just submitted a comment that said, we also get our bereavement coordinator involved with some families prior to death. It has been very beneficial.
Yes, we bereavement coordinators kind of pick up the baton as the patient staff, and then when that patient dies, they pass the baton on to the bereavement coordinator. That bereavement coordinator with their groups and everything really have the same issues as far as taking care of themselves as everyone else on the team. So I don't want you to feel, well, you know, we didn't deal with the patient when they died, so we don't really, it's different. It's not different. You still become involved with families and with patients, and you will have the same personal grief issues and attachment issues as everyone else on the team.
Dawn B. from Westminster Village asked, what suggestions or specific suggestions might you have for, and this is back to chaplains, for trying to encourage care for the nurses as caregivers? So things that the chaplains can do to help promote self-care among the nurses. Well,
I kind of really just talked about that. I think I answered that.
Okay. Great. So the next question that was submitted is actually from Suncoast down in Florida, and I know they are hosting a lunch and learn. So hello to the 40-some nurses in the room.
That is cool.
This is very cool. Very cool. They submitted the question, this is about families. How do you deal with complaints from families against you after you have given your all for them?
Oh, yes, yes. As people pleasers, it's really hard for us to think that someone doesn't like us. I think that what the adage, you can please some of the people some of the time, but you can't please all the people all the time. When we also have to recognize that families, we're all dysfunctional. You know, that's the name of the game. That's life. Life is dysfunction. It's just a matter of degree. And we get into these families who are under stress, and their normal dysfunction, which we all have, gets intensified. It gets magnified. And part of that can be displaced anger. And we look for a hook for that anger, and we're probably just angry that mom's dying, and we're angry at mom because she wasn't the kind of mom we wanted her to be, and we've got all this stuff, but we don't know what to do with it. So we look at the hospice nurse or the hospice social worker and say, it's you. You know, everything would be much better if you weren't here telling us what to do or whatever. We tend to find a hook for the anger, and that's often us. So you go to your supervisor and you say, this is what's happening, and the family's upset with me. They yelled and whatever. You may get a phone call, whatever. Go to your supervisor, cover your tush. You know that it could be you. I mean, we're not perfect, but more than likely it's the family's dysfunction that is being put on you. I think, I've got time. I'm going to tell a story. We had this family. A different hospice nurse went in, and the family called the director and said, this nurse is just awful. She's terrible, and we don't want her ever to come back to this house. And so we had our bereavement coordinator, who was also a psychologist, go out to the family because this nurse said there's some big issues going on out there. Well, He left, and the family called the director and said, we don't want this man ever to come back into this house. It's terrible. So they sent me. Okay, here's another nurse. And actually, I thought we were getting along really well. And I took care of, I was there, you know, instead of just a few days, I was there for a couple of months. And one day I come into work and the director says, I got a call from Mr. Smith, and he said that if you step foot on their property, he's going to put a restraining order on you. There are some people that you just can't please, you know, that their dysfunction is such that you just can't be there. And it all goes back to tell your story to the supervisor so that you're on safe ground.
Great, thank you. And this next question is about an inpatient hospice setting. What suggestions do you have to provide care for the caregivers in a busy inpatient hospice? There's often very little time between death and another admission.
Read it, say it again. I'm not.
Sure.
Yes.
What suggestions do you have to provide to care for the caregivers in a busy inpatient hospice? There's often very little time between a death and another admission.
Okay. Again, I would go with having your own ritual, and maybe in an inpatient, you might, in your chapel, light a candle with a death so that you have an opportunity to go in and light that candle. If you were there at the moment of death, then have the protocol be the person that was there at the moment of death. It's their responsibility to go into the chapel and light a candle. And that is then your personal opportunity to say, you know, thank you for coming into my life. And I light this candle as a symbol of your journey into the other world. Whatever works in your head, you need closure. And also, I would say look and see what your personal belief system is in regards to death and dying. Because if you think dying is bad, if you think death is a negative, then this isn't the work for you. And yet a lot of people who are doing this work, there's an interior sadness. And that goes to your core belief about living and dying. You know, I don't see death as being bad. You know, death is sad. It's very, very sad, but it isn't bad. It's very much a part of life. And how fortunate we are to have the personality and the ability to work comfortably, underline, comfortably with end of life. And I think there's a lot of us that are doing end of life work that unconsciously there is still that element of, oh, this is bad. You know, this is a failure or whatever. And we have to really look at ourselves first in order to stay healthy and to stay in this work. And I think, you know, we need to look and say, am I doing this work because it's a job? Or am I doing this work because it's an avocation? Because I feel drawn to doing this work. And That's why, as I talked earlier, it's so important to look inside your heart, look inside your soul, your being of, why am I doing this? Because it is outside of the medical model. It is going against everything we've been taught as far as medical establishment is. And that creates a tension. It creates an unseen pressure. And so if every day you're taking on the sadness of the family, then you have to look at yourself, because that isn't your sadness, that's theirs. And that's a part of life that we're all going to have to experience.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Barbara. We have just a couple more minutes. Is there anything you would like to share with the great group of caregivers that we have on the call today, or any messages with this month being National Hospice Awareness Month?
Hey, I am so proud of the work that we frontline caregivers at end of life do. You know, the people that are drawn to this work, if you were to see a symbol, it would just be a big heart. You know, we are so blessed to have all of you be the ice cutters, so to speak, as we move forward and teach and show the rest of the world that dying isn't bad, that we can teach and support and nurture people through this last act of living. And it's special, special work, and I applaud all of you. And thanks for coming today to listen. And, know that I am available for all of you. I don't do well on the phone, but I email anybody. If you have something you want to share with me, if you have something that you want to ask me, or some situation that you're having a challenge with that you think I might be able to shine some light on, give me an email. That's what I'm on this planet for. I am here to help support and guide you in this wonderful end-of-life work. Thanks for being there today.
Well, thank you so much for being a part of this. Thank you for answering all the questions. And Betsy, anything you'd like to add?
I want to add my heartfelt thanks as a hospice nurse to you. It was wonderful for you to spend this time with us and share your wisdom and encouragement. So thank you, Barbara.
Thank you again. Amazing questions. And this has been an honor to spend this hour with you all. And again, happy National Hospice and Palliative Care Awareness Month. Thank you so much for all that you do. Hope you all have a wonderful week. Thank you.